Chapter 4. "They're here, sir," Gaddis said over Morrison's personal comm channel. "Good. Tell the Rangers to begin their scouting around the tower. Leave the Yizangdui patrolling the diamond floor near the fountains and entrances. I'd rather them here than on the front lines." "Very good, sir. The augmented soldiers are also on their way." "Interesting that Baruger didn't send an envoy. Let's see what the Germans have been hiding behind that shield of theirs." Morrison poured himself a drink, then kicked his feet up on the desk as he waited for Gaddis to lead in the new soldiers under his command. Instead, he was interrupted by a pinging by the computer at his desk. He used his heel to answer the call. "Yes," Morrison called out.
"I imagine my men have arrived."
It was Baruger's voice. As if on cue, Gaddis, followed by 4 heavily armored soldiers, all equipped with strangely designed assault rifles, entered his office. Their colors were a gray and black camouflage, like the kind his son had worn. Perfect for the interior ruins of New Purgatory. "Impress me, Baruger. They look like my son's old platoon."
"Appearance is perhaps their strongest weapon. Looking like a threat makes your enemies try to find ways around your enhancements, yet simply looking like another soldier lulls your attacker into a false sense of security."
Morrison studied each soldier's steely face. They seemed to not blink, let alone show any other emotion. "So, what, you took away their ability to be personable?"
"I took away the natural weaknesses your soldiers both feel and experience. For example..."
The foremost soldier spun on a dime and raised his pistol towards Gaddis and relinquished a bullet into the man's brain, while his comrades raised their own weapons towards the exit points and windows inside the office. "Christ!" Morrison shouted aloud.
"Are you paying attention, John? A regular man or woman might have inhibitions about killing an unarmed civilian. They do not."
"That was my head of security," Morrison yelled back at the computer.
"Oh, please. You won't need a head of security after you've seen what these adaptations of science can do."
Each soldier dropped their weapons at their sides. "How do they move in unison so perfectly? Training? Mind conditioning?" Morrison asked.
"A unique nanotechnology system implanted into the brain. The result is thought processing at the shortest level of time, enhanced reflexes, and one final interesting side effect."
"Which is?"
"Dallas, move towards the window,"
Baruger ordered. The foremost soldier responded, doing such.
"Vedra, stand beside your new boss. Face the doorway."
"What are you trying to do here, Baruger?"
"Dallas, look at the series of buildings out the window. Exclude major landmarks easily knowable. Now, John, stand beside Dallas while he points out what he sees."
Morrison did not understand the exercise, but he could pick out exactly where Dallas was looking.
"Now, Vedra, what do you see?"
For the first time, one of them spoke. "Several moving vehicles, APCs, tanks, transport trucks. The inner city roads appear clean. Insignificant amounts of refuse. No visible infantry." "They could have seen that on the flight in. I have patrols constantly moving throughout downtown," Morrison scoffed, turning back towards the screen.
"Dallas, open John's desk drawer."
"Now wait a minute."
"You wanted proof, John? Dig your grave on somebody else's time."
The soldier did as he was told.
"Vedra."
Several brands of pistols, Smith & Wesson, Springfield Armory, old U.S. military models. Several assorted documents labeled Eyes Only, ammunition. Morrison could not hide the horror on his face. "This is impossible."
"Your father and I's innovations may as well have eliminated the impossible from the dictionary, John. The lack of rules and regulations has made the progression of science reach astounding levels during the nearly 20 years of time I've had."
"How did you accomplish this? Genetic modification?" Morrison asked.
"Nothing so wasteful. These soldiers proved their value long ago. Experience combined with some innovation on my part and your father's knowledge of radiation made it possible. But it's a story for another time. All you need to be aware of is that they will follow your orders down to perfection. Do not separate them. They work best as a team."
They'll be my reactor team then. With this squad, no one stands a chance at...
Your what?
Beruger cut him off. The reactor. Newsom gave me their target before I ended his life.
Ridiculous. The location is well hidden, John. He's playing you.
Not anymore, Morrison replied with a grin.
You're not seeing the logic, boy. They picture themselves revolutionaries. Why destroy their home only to kill you? They would take more lives than you have in your entire tenure.
They can't be foolish enough to believe that storming my tower is their best option, Morrison spat back.
Aren't they? How many of your men have they killed? That is why you called on the Council's aid, isn't it?
Morrison chose not to respond, and instead mulled over Beruger's words.
I would give this a good thinking over, boy. Beruger out.
Morrison's computer screen flashed off, and the old scientist winked away. His gift was impressive, perhaps impressive enough to end this threat for the last time. Names, Morrison said aloud. Dallas, Phaedra, Cade, Eldrick. Morrison smiled. At least Beruger didn't make their names inhuman. His moment of peace in watching them was interrupted by a siren blaring on his terminal. Report, he yelled into his comm. Sir, Truck 8 has left formation. Radio contact? Morrison asked. Not responding, sir. They're making way to the armory. Morrison cut his comm short and looked up at his new tools. Go and secure my armory. Now. That's one way to steal a truck, Tommy yelled as he floored the gas. Giant hole in the road always works, Tyler replied. Any following us? Tommy called out. Not that we can see. Wouldn't slow down to... The overbearing sound of chain gun fire cut through Janet's reply. Oh, shit, Otto yelled from the comm. Hell chopper, Janet screamed as she cut a large hole through the canvas covering the rear truck bed. Fucker just strafed us. It's making way back east. It'll come back, Otto groaned. Janet saw he had taken an unlucky bullet to the gut. Shit. I'm fine. Already pulled it out. Scare that fucking pilot. Janet gave him a nod, then glanced at Talia. Help him apply pressure. Janet climbed through the hole in the canvas, looking out towards the hell chopper that was banking around for another turn. Janet, Tommy yelled, ignoring his comm and opting for the urgent volume in his voice. Keep it still, Tom, Janet yelled. Still, Tommy said, looking over at Tyler. She's a hell of a shot, Grace, Tyler said. Yeah, well, if they hit you, we're all going up in an explosion, Tommy replied. And if it hits you, I'll be sure to grab the steering wheel. Janet had pulled herself up and pushed her legs against the opening to keep her stable. As the hell chopper made way, she looked down her high-powered scope. With a flick of a small lever, she switched to armor-piercing ammunition, locked away in her second clip. She zoomed in with her scope and adjusted its display. The pilot came into view while the bird began revving its chain guns again for a second salvo. Janet drew a deep breath, let it go, and fired 2 shots. The first hit glass, shattering the canopy and hitting her target. The second went lower unintentionally, though Janet hoped it would catch the controls. The gun stopped firing and the bird went past them in a nosedive, sailing towards the nearest building. Janet turned to watch it collide, but was met with surprise when the bird pulled up hard, though it did not change direction again. What the hell? She said under her breath, climbing back into the truck. Did anyone else see that? I see it's gone. That's all I care about, Tommy called out. As Janet dropped back into the bed, Talia glanced up at her. The wound is fine, but he won't be able to fight. Janet grimaced at all the blood coating the woman's hands. Tyler, we need to go back. No chance, Otto interrupted as he forced himself to his feet. We've got one shot at this. We're not going to waste it on a damn flesh wound. That's just insulting. Everyone be ready then, Janet said. I get the feeling someone's going to be waiting for us. Mikhail, Ezra, and Brandon had elected to move to the airport on foot after hiding their getaway vehicle a block from the airport. No fencing, Brandon stated, his eyes nearly glued to his scope. Enough security to make his tower look like his dad's vacation home, though. When Brandon finally did pull away, he could see his joke was lost on the other 2 men.
Is it true you were this daring once before?
Ezra asked as the group waited for patrols to pass. They were hiding in a blown-out restaurant. We saw the corruption and tried to end the madness before it started. Franklin Morrison could have made a brilliant leader, but his son was always wild. He was killing people even before his father was murdered. The mix of losing his father and an attempt on his life would have logically made him more prone to violence, Mikhail analyzed. There's nothing logical about that man, but blood boil proves your theory. I can't imagine what he'll do after this, Brandon replied. Yeah, we won't give him the chance to react, I think, Ezra said, standing as another patrol went by. We move. The trio ran out of the restaurant and towards the airstrip. Ezra wasn't surprised at the number of Marines on patrol, but he had also first come to New Purgatory by way of this airstrip, and he paid attention to every small gap in its defenses. The bounty hunter led them towards an outcropping near the terminal tower, just beyond the sight of the guards. Perhaps I can sneak around them and eliminate them without putting the tower on alert, Mikhail stated. Ezra stifled a laugh. Yeah, do you ever do more than move through air ducts or creep in shadows? The patrols will return by the time you move through the building's bowels. Ezra stood and rushed the two Marines alone. They spotted him, but did not fire, curious at the leather-clad figure racing towards them. Then Ezra brought up his twin scatter pistols and laid fire into them. Before the Marines could even raise their weapons, they were on the ground bleeding out. Clear, Ezra said in his heavy accent. He watched as Brandon and Mikhail strode over slowly, weapons raised towards the windows. We sweep the first floor, then climb our way up. Simple, the bounty hunter stated. Brandon shook his head as Ezra turned back around to kick in the door. There were no more Marines, just men and women dressed in plain clothes. The sniper knew they were likely engineers, loading, unloading workers, and flight coordinators. While Mikhail and Brandon stayed their weapons, they were horrified to see that Ezra would not. They watched as he sprayed his rounds across the room until there was not a man or woman left standing, and blood coated the floor and walls. Mikhail had no reaction and moved on towards the stairs, while Brandon stayed frozen in time. Those were non-combatants, he said in disbelief. Yeah, we didn't want them calling for help. We may be waiting for a while, and I'd prefer not to risk it, Ezra replied. But if we had moved slower, we might have had to wait for another plane, Ezra cut him off. Don't make an issue out of this, Fox. People die every day. If they're loyal to Morrison, then all the better. Brandon tried hard to find morality that made him want to disagree, and then Nayala popped into his head. The innocent deaths faded away as he thought of how she might have been murdered in Morrison's tower. You make a good point, Brandon finally said. Let's just move. Right behind you, Ezra replied. The armory was just in viewing distance, but the exterior was crowded with soldiers, all aiming towards Tommy's truck. "Oh, fuck," the driver said, his mind going blank. Then the bullets came, smacking into glass and pulling him hard back into reality. Both he and Tyler ducked below the windshield. Tommy kept his footing pinned to the gas and pulled the steering wheel hard. The tires screeched until the momentum threw the semi into a roll. There were thuds of whatever was outside smacking and being crunched under the rolling semi. When the truck finally stopped moving, there was no more gunfire. Tommy thought he could feel his ribs sticking out of his chest. I think we're upside down, Tommy said. He saw that Tyler had blood running down his face, but was already working his seatbelt out from over his body. No shit, the bomber replied, using a knife to cut himself free. The two emerged to find Janet and Talia checking bodies. A few more had bullet wounds. Talia was covered in red rashes, and Janet had a few gashes across her head and shoulders. It was Otto who looked in the worst shape. How many did I get? Tommy groaned, combing back his hair. Not enough, Janet replied, tilting her rifle to several of the bodies at her side. Won't be long until they send more. We need another vehicle. The mission's changed. We must get the convict out. He won't survive his wounds, Talia interrupted. I already said no, goddammit. I can still... Otto attempted to lift his massive frame, but crumpled back down to the asphalt. Fuck. Janet knew she had to think quickly. Waiting or attacking the armory could mean Otto's death. How much explosives do you have, Ruin? She asked. Enough to tear down a good-sized wall, Tyler replied. Put it on the door, Janet replied. Are you insane? Talia cut back. We can't breach. That's the whole reason we needed a rig. I got an idea, Tyler replied. Do it, Janet ordered. Tyler first ran for the overturned tanker, looking for a fueling hose and running it to the door. It was only a matter of time before the fuel would begin to leak from the truck, and they were all lucky a fire hadn't started in the roll. Tyler let the fuel spew from the hose on the door. He then went to work placing the stickers on the main door. Janet kept her gun pointed to the armory, while Tommy and Talia dragged Otto behind the cover of another overturned vehicle. When Tyler started sprinting back towards the truck, Janet ducked and covered her head. The explosion set off a chain reaction that blew apart the semi. Past that, Janet saw the front side of the building torn off as if a blade had sheared off the walling between her and the rest of the building. "Nice job, Ruin," Janet said into her comm. "Cover convict. Faith, you're with me." Talia didn't respond, but Janet saw her body pop up from behind the truck and move towards her. There were several more bodies of unconscious soldiers, likely knocked away by the blast. Janet looked up and saw directions. The lockup to their left and a garage to their right. Janet went right. Talia did not question her from that point on. They hit a hallway where several Marines were running straight towards them. Janet got off the first shot, sending the furthest Marine to hell. Talia swooped around her and unsheathed her blade, swinging it upwards and catching the closest Marine in a swath across his chest. Then she spun hard and cut across the second's throat. Janet sprinted past the filleted soldiers and towards the door at the end of the hall. She kicked it open and raised her rifle. 4 soldiers stood before her, each with their weapons raised. "Oh." She ducked and went behind the covered metal railing as bullets flew by her. Just behind, Talia went to the floor beside her. "It was a mistake to come here," the 4 soldiers yelled in unison as the gunfire stopped. "You think you can hit my facilities and get away with it?" "What the hell are these guys?" Janet asked aloud. Before Talia could answer, another explosion rocked the foundation of the building. The sound of bullets followed, but they were towards a new exit. "Janet, Talia, there's an opening in the garage," Tyler yelled through the comm. "We are in the garage as well. Watch yourself. These soldiers aren't natural," Talia called back. Janet spared a glance over the railing. All 4 soldiers were moving on Tyler. She was forced to duck again when 2 of the Marines turned towards her. "Talia, go around the other side," Janet whispered. The other woman moved to a cross-section of a ramp leading down towards the garage. Janet leaned her rifle over the edge and let off a few rounds. Talia responded by moving around the corner and rushing one of the blind soldiers. The soldier turned in an instant and used his rifle to block Talia's slash. It cut his rifle in 2, but caught her off guard long enough for him to throw a punch at her chest that sent her flying to the floor. Janet started laying bullets into the unarmed soldier, but with each round he continued to move. She laid off her trigger and stared down at him in disbelief. "What the fuck?" "Throwing flash," Tyler yelled out. Janet covered her eyes. Tyler must have seen what she saw. Janet took the opportunity to race down to Talia and brought her to her feet, and then the 2 ran back into the hall. "What are they?" Tyler said over the comm. "Doesn't matter. Get Otto and get the hell out," Janet yelled back. She and Talia raced back for the entrance and caught Tyler and Tommy near the carrier. "There's no way we can outrun them. I've never seen a soldier that could take rounds like that," Janet said as she fought to catch her breath. "More than me?" Otto said, forcing a laugh that caused him to cough. "About an entire clip more. Hang on, I've got an idea." Ezra, Mikhail, and Brandon came up to the top floor, where only 2 men were working. Mikhail could overhear them giving commands to the incoming and outgoing flights. These were the air traffic controllers. Mikhail made the first step before Ezra could do anything rash. With the silenced pistol, he took the woman to his right, while using his other arm to drive his blade into the soft back end of the closer man's skull. He pulled it out slowly, careful to let the blood fall to the ground rather than on his skin suit. "Yeah, too squeamish. A couple of well-placed shots. Do your job, Ezra, and then tell me when it is time to leave," Mikhail said, cutting him off. Mikhail grabbed a chair and disconnected from the world around him. The bounty hunter spit off to the side and glanced at Brandon. "It's all for a heartless killer, eh?" Ezra asked. "Not the words I'd use. He killed my whole team with the same reaction," the sniper replied. "And you're working with him?" Ezra questioned. "You're here, aren't you?" Brandon shot back. Brandon moved over to the overlook of the airstrip. It was empty compared to the outcropping around them, so full of soldiers ready to die for their master. "I always found it so amusing how a singular act could change one's fate for so many years," Ezra continued. "You can debate humanities and histories with the doctor. I'm fine with the goals life has presented me. Brandon replied.
And when they're completed,
Ezra asked, taking his place in the control chair and putting the headset over his ears. Why think ahead when the enemy still breathes? You're a bounty hunter. Don't you look to your target before examining the next one?
the next goal is my encouragement, Fox. If I had nothing to look forward to.
Wait. Ezra held up a hand. Brandon guessed he was hearing a broadcast.
Landing strip Central Paramount copies Carrier 1. Coordinates are as transmitted,
Ezra said. Mikhail gave Brandon a glance. The sniper wondered if he had been listening to them the entire time, or off in another world in his mind.
Your coordinates are correct, Carrier. Fly back to Jerusalem, if you don't believe me. Central Paramount out,
Ezra finished. Let's hope they bought that, Brandon sneered, reaching into his jacket for a cigar to chew.
Yeah, they have no reason not to. Protocol holds true,
Ezra replied. Are there records on the flight's manifest? Mikhail asked.
What do you care?
Ezra shot back. Brandon found himself intrigued by Mikhail's request. The plane could have valuable cargo, or those who do not deserve the brutality of your plan, Mikhail stated. Ezra shook his head.
I don't get you, assassin. How many people have you killed?
Too many, Mikhail replied. Ezra wanted to believe the man was bluffing, but Mikhail was always so serious he wasn't sure if the assassin could bluff.
It's a cargo charter. Mostly food and material goods. Any weapons or ammunition they wouldn't list. As far as non-combatants go, it's a shell crew. No comfort passengers.
So even the bounty hunter can be frightened, Brandon thought to himself.
You may find my interest quaint, bounty hunter, but I wonder what your countrymen would make of your lack of compassion,
Mikhail said, making towards the window.
How did your countrymen feel about yours?
The bounty hunter spat. The shadow hid away back in his own mind instead of replying. He was finished arguing with the willing traitor. He had hoped to find common ground with the man, but there was none. Ezra, meanwhile, let a smile cross his face.
Should be only 10-15 minutes. We need to get on the ground.
What? Why? I thought they were crashing into the airstrip, Brandon asked.
The height from the ground isn't the only parameter I changed. Let's move.
Tyler did his best to jury-rig his remaining explosives near the entrance again, while the rest of the team pulled Otto up the road. His quick thinking would buy time, but he didn't know if it would be enough. Everything's set, Tyler called out. I see them moving in. Make for the road, Janet replied. We're holed up in an old shop. Tyler dared to peek into the building. Bullets flung by. He gauged their distance at 12 or 15 feet. Close enough to land a lucky shot, but nowhere near killing range. The bomber took a long breath, and then burst out in a sprint. No bullets chased him. He counted 5 seconds before snapping his thumb down on the detonator. The harsh rumble knocked him off his feet and into the air. Tyler rebounded into a roll and never stopped his stride, nor turned his head to watch the carnage. He could see the store just ahead, and didn't stop until he crashed through one of the windows. As he opened his eyes and breathed hard, he could see the faces of his friends around them. Please tell me they're gone, he asked between breaths. Not quite, Janet said, already sighting down her target. They used you to find us. Fuck! Tyler wanted to rear up and shoot, but saw that shards of glass had embedded his arms. Otto looked unconscious or dead as Tommy tried to tend to him, and Talia was reloading her SMG. Only Janet was firing, all the while cursing the fact that her shots were accomplishing nothing. Fuck, we never even got close. The thought ran through Tyler's head. This was the end. But then there was a screeching of tires, and the sound of more bullets firing from guns. Reinforcements. Shit. He closed his eyes and waited for the oblivion that was bound to take him. When he opened them again and saw Layla reaching to lift him to his feet, he couldn't hide his surprise. She was like an angel, a goddamn savior. As he was pulled off the ground, he could see Tommy dragging Otto into the back of Alex's BMW, while Janet continued to suppress the squad of 4. With everyone loaded up, Alex swung the car around and stopped near Janet, waiting for her to jump in as round after round slammed into the car's siding. She refused to stop firing, even as she entered the BMW. God damn it! Die, you motherfucker! She yelled, finally nailing the closest in the head. Even as the soldier dropped, he kept crawling towards them. Death itself could not stop them. Alex hit the gas hard and drifted into a turn away from the unstoppable soldiers and the armory forever.
Who the hell were they?
Layla asked, helping Tyler pull shards from his arms in the cramped back seat.
Not a clue,
Janet replied, still angry at all the ammunition she had wasted trying to kill them.
We wasted too much time and firepower on them for nothing, though. We didn't even get a chance to rig the place. It all went to shit.
Nothing natural could take all those rounds. Even if there were any more of those things, we're in for a rough ride, Tommy said, tightly tucked in between Janet and Alex in the front middle seat.
It doesn't matter now. Alex, we need to hurry. Our auto won't make it,
Talia said, still holding the large man's gaping wound, even though he was long passed out.
I'm going as fast as I can. Just make sure he doesn't lose any more blood.
Alex pressed his foot down harder on the gas. He hoped he could get back to Dellen before he lost another soldier.
What if they call for more directions?
Mikhail asked as the trio waited back in the blown-out restaurant.
I rerouted their transmissions to my comm unit. The only way they'd know is if they had a hacker aboard, which I doubt. Morrison had me come aboard a similar aircraft. Cargo planes, they never draw suspicion unless a platoon lands with them,
Ezra replied. Where are they now? Brandon asked.
Hold on. Carrier 1, what's your ETA?
Ezra said into his comm. The pilot's voice filled the trio's headsets. Ezra motioned for the other two to remain quiet. Likely 2-3 minutes, Central Paramount. The fog is throwing off our landing.
You understood, one. The coordinates should guide you in unless you're planning on dropping your cargo from the sky.
There was no response for a moment, and then the pilot came back over the comm. Starting our approach, Central Paramount. Have the beer ready.
And now the fun starts,
Ezra said as he turned off his comm. There was a silence for a time as the three looked towards the end of the runway. Ezra crossed his arms and shifted his head towards the control tower. An evil grin spread across his face. The fog was so thick that they heard the cargo plane before they could make it out through the clouds. When they did see it, it was already crashing into the main tower they had just escaped from minutes ago. The right wing and main body sheared against the tower, while the rest started a fiery explosion. Carrier aircraft were the few vehicles left in the old world that still ran on petroleum, but to call the explosion non-violent would be a lie. Fire spread across the runway from the spewing jet fuel. Nearby Morrison patrols raced toward the giant ball of fire to do what they could to douse it.
I suggest vacating the area while the patrols are distracted,
Mikhail advised as Brandon and Ezra watched the smaller explosions cascade from the epicenter.
Yeah,
Brandon said solemnly, still mesmerized by the fires. Ezra managed to pull his attention away to look at Mikhail.
All right, let's get back to base.
Morrison watched the view screen that broadcast his new soldiers' sights. The explosion had been inventive enough to let the Crusaders get away and to end the life of Cade. While he had lost a soldier, Morrison had gained more insight into the tools he had been given, as well as a victory. It was a simple price to pay. His armory, while partially destroyed, still carried all his weapons, rather than any being stolen or damaged. A moment later, when a message pinged urgent over his comm, did he lose himself to anger.
They what?
Morrison screamed.
It had to be an error on the part of the tower, sir, or the weather. Either way, Central Paramount is no longer operable.
Win one battle, only to lose another. Morrison tried to calm his nerves. The attack on the armory and his only airstrip was too convenient to be anything less than a setup. They were attempting to divide and conquer, and thus far had been doing a decent job. Let the strip burn and return to my tower. Until this threat is over, I want my power consolidated. Morrison brought his attention back to Omega Squad. Return to me. Bring the body of your companion. He will make a nice project for the techs down a few floors. Morrison cut off his comm and began to remember what Beruger had said. Were the Crusaders really planning to attack his tower dead on? Or were they performing another feint for the attack on the reactor? He was torn between the two possibilities. It would be suicide to attack him in his tower head-on, but Beruger had made an interesting point. What would destroying the entire city accomplish? Even if he knew the answer, it would not help. He had already moved his forces. Many had already been sent to Queens. With his refueling station out of commission, and only 2 substations in the city, pulling back his forces in time would be impossible.
Beruger's words started to make sense. Then he thought back to Jack Newsom. The old soldier had died knowing he had pulled one final trick. They had all fooled him and isolated him from most of his army. John Morrison knew a decision had to be made, but he had hoped he wouldn't have to make it alone. Every person he had confided in was either dead or a potential enemy. He looked out the window over his city, as he often did, and watched the fog burn up under the new day's light. "Command," Morrison said into his comm unit. "Yes, sir?" "Stop the remaining vehicles heading towards Queens and turn them back to the tower. Also, I want all patrols consolidated around the tower. Bring everything not in Queens back in." "Understood, sir. The armory is locked back down. Shall I divert a platoon there?" "No," Morrison replied. "Send a team and an APC to procure as much weapons and as much ammunition as possible, and leave the rest. There is a threat headed our way, soldier, and we need to be prepared." "Yes, sir." "Spread thin, but at least we're both protected. They won't win either way." Morrison moved his rolling chair over to the window. For the first time in a month and a half, he finally felt as if he had a grip on the situation. He had a victory, and though it came at a cost, it had also revealed his enemy's true plan. This gang that had become a legend on his streets was human, and if they tried to prove they were more, they would fail under his harsh light. With no leader, no direction, and a suicidal plan, it was only a matter of time. Janet's team made it back first, and already had a stretcher ready for Otto. Dellen helped bring the convict back to their rooms and went to work patching the big man up. Janet and Alex went near the weapon benches to speak privately, while the others went to clean themselves off. "What the hell happened?" Alex asked. Janet knew he was more concerned than accusatory, but it didn't come across that way. "A hellchopper jumped us. I thought I killed the pilot. Their bird was nosediving, then regained control at the last second," she explained. "So they knew where you were headed?" Alex pressed. "Taking the truck probably tipped them off. We weren't exactly subtle about where we were going," Janet replied. Alex shook his head. "What I don't understand is why he's shifting his troops to Queens. What's there that's so important? And why does he think that's where we're going to attack?" "I know. It doesn't just seem like rumors anymore, does it?" Janet questioned. "Jack," Alex said with a sigh. Janet's eyes lit up. Whatever he knew, it was enough to throw Morrison off balance. Enough to get him to divert, Alex stated. "Then it won't be long before he figures out what we're really after, because I've got no fucking clue what he's protecting in Queens," Janet replied. "We've got to strike now, Alex. We might not get another chance at this if we don't." Alex could see that she was adamant. They had done what they set out to accomplish when they returned, but to Alex it didn't feel like enough. At that moment, the trio of Mikhail, Brandon, and Ezra entered the loft. "How did it go?" Alex yelled across the room. "Better than this team," Brandon replied, taking a gander at Otto on Dellen's table. Mikhail moved over to Alex and Janet. "The airstrip is no longer operable. They will be cleaning the wreckage for months." "Not if they're all dead," Janet said as she ran her fingers through her hair and looked at Alex. "How injured is the convict?" Mikhail asked. "He took a round from a hellchopper and is still breathing, if that tells you much," Alex replied. "And we ran across some pretty strange soldiers," Janet added. "In what aspect?" Mikhail questioned. "They reminded me of you. Except they were meant for the front line, and when you shoot them, they don't die," Janet explained. "I combed over Russia for more than 20 years and never found any innovation close to the experiments at Severnaya. They could not be like me," Mikhail protested. "That cuts them off from being a foreign innovation, then," Janet said. "Perhaps not. It is probable that Morrison has enlisted help from other countries. His father is owed a great debt by the world," Mikhail noted. "Sure, but your home was the only place experimenting with human enhancement," Alex stated. "That we know of. Other nations have had time and limitless energy to work with. It is reasonable that one of the scientists from Severnaya would restart their research, or that another nation would attempt to emulate it," Mikhail added. "Which one doesn't matter right now anyway. Our focus needs to be on the tower," Janet said, bringing the conversation back around. "I agree. Morrison will begin more desperate strikes if we do not end him soon. Weakening his forces will cause him to consolidate until we are destroyed, Mikhail said. All right, I'll let everyone know, but let's give it a day. We need Otto moving and everyone at their best. Until I say the word, let's keep it business as usual, Alex concluded. Understood, Mikhail replied. Okay, Alex, Janet said. He watched as they walked away and exhaled a heavy breath. The time had finally come. Alex ended up back in his bed for the rest of the day, trying to sleep off the excitement or fear. Layla was beside him, sound asleep. He wondered what the others might be up to, but decided to leave them be for now. Earlier, he'd contacted Alonso to prep something special for the night. A grand meal for them all to enjoy before ending this fight. Time, he said softly into his comm. 6:30 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time, the robotic voice replied. Alex tossed his legs over the side of the bed and made for the shower. Of all the small conveniences this place had, he enjoyed running water the most. The ability to wash off grime, blood, and dust from New Purgatory felt like he was washing off sin, pain, and the past. Hot, cold, it didn't matter. It was a luxury. One that he hoped everyone could share when Morrison was dead. When he jumped out and dried himself off, he stood in the doorway and watched Layla sleep. She tossed every so often, dragging the blankets and sheets with her. Might be the last time you ever see her. He regretted thinking that. Alex rubbed his eyes and nose with one hand before leaving the room. Now wasn't the time for doubts. If this was their last night, he didn't want to spend it thinking on what could happen tomorrow. No one was out in the main room, save for Dellin, who was cleaning his surgical instruments. Otto's minor surgery had been a success, though whether he could participate in the coming battle was up in the air. Did you even sleep? Alex asked. Old men don't sleep, Yank. Not for more than an hour or two, anyway. You didn't really think I'd let you beat me there, huh? Dell, I gotta ask you a question. Go on, then. The mission, Alex stated. I think it's about time we stopped waiting and killed the bastard. That's what tonight is about, isn't it? Dellin asked. Tomorrow night, Alex replied. I want us all to have one last night. It'll give Otto a chance to rest up, too. You couldn't keep that man from the battlefield if you tore his arms off. Even with his stomach all split up, he had me do the stitches without anesthetic. Tough old man, Alex said. Tougher than most. Glad the chopper didn't off him. That would have been a bad way to go. You say that as if there's any pleasant way to go, Alex replied. I've asked myself that question many times since the first mission. To be honest, Alex, there isn't. I've seen all kinds of death. None of them are glorious. Watching the life empty out of someone isn't a good thing. But if I were to die, then I'd say trying to change the world qualifies as a decent enough way. Alex smiled and looked back towards his room. Do me a favor, Dell. Sure, kid. Get everyone up in an hour or two. I've got to go grab some shit from Alonso. Aye, just don't be there too long, or they'll think you've gone to take on the man himself. Alex gave Dell a nod and turned towards the door. He'd thought about trying that before, too. Maybe too many times. Where in the hell do you find this stuff, Alonso? Alex asked, looking at the trays of varying foods. The old man set me up with one of Morrison's suppliers near the fish markets. They trade with nations that still farm and do a little hydro. Getting the money is the only issue now, but we don't do a lot of food here. This was a special order, the owner replied. What was the damage? Don't worry about it. What you've done to help the city is more than enough for me. Just kill Morrison and call it even. Thanks for the confidence. Go on now, Alex. I'll have some of the ladies bring it all up in a minute. Alex left the kitchen for the main club. It was filling up with the early drinkers, drug dealers, and people just looking for a quick bite to eat. Months ago, this place had been odd and unfamiliar to him, but now it was like a second home. He still wasn't sure he liked the idea of living comfortably while others were forced to live like rats, hiding in collapsed buildings and sewers. He skipped going to the bar and instead went outside for a smoke. He pulled a Ghana cigarette out of a pouch on his jacket and stared down at it. It was raining, but he had a nice overhang to hide under. This was his favorite weather. The clouded skies, the foggy air, and the chill in the bone of his spine. What a day to finish a war. Ghana had changed for him since Elias died. Or maybe it was he who had changed. Instead of pleasant, it made him feel self-conscious, worried. Maybe it had passed him by. Alex stared down at the awfully rolled cig and flicked it out into the rain. The water falling around him was all he needed now. One last glimpse of the world he was fighting for in all its unnatural beauty. One last meal. And one last time with friends who he might never see again. The team had gathered by Dellen's request at the long table. Everyone sat near who they had grown closest with over the last 2 months. While Ezra found himself at the opposite head of the table from Alex, Dellen, Otto, and Brandon sat on one side along with Janet, a stark semblance of the first team to attempt their plan. Tyler, Mikhail, Tommy, and Talia sat opposite of them, while Layla pushed her seat to the corner to be nearer to Alex, who didn't mind giving up the extra table space. Everyone seemed to be sticking to water or juices rather than alcohol. Every man and woman sitting at that table knew what was at stake the following night. Before the breads and salads came up, Alex went over the base plan, but when the food started to arrive, he stopped. We can go over the rest after dinner. I wanted to do this tonight, because all of us haven't had a meal like this in a long time. Like it or not, our lives are tied together by our actions tomorrow. To me, that defines family. So enjoy, bullshit, and remember why you're here. Not just for me, but what encouraged you. Janet gave Alex a nod. We should all give our reasons. Go ahead, he responded. I'm here because my father fought for the first team 10 years ago. It wasn't like he planned on leaving me behind. And if he was afraid, he damn sure didn't show it. My father didn't deserve to end up on the wrong side of a Marine's rifle that he helped innovate. He's the reason I want to bring Morrison down, because I know there's plenty of other sons and daughters like me who feel the same way. Tyler held up a hand, signaling his wanting to speak next. I met Alex damn near 5 or 6 years ago. My brother, rest his soul, and I were running from a Morrison patrol that caught us stealing ration packs out of one of their pickups. Van's idea was to blow him over. They ended up chasing us near the outskirts when we ran into another kill zone. Alex and Eli were taking on a group of 5 mean sons of bitches. Van and I piled on to assist, and in turn got helped when reinforcements arrived. We've been fighting these assholes ever since, but tomorrow is a chance for me to let my brother rest, knowing we finished the job we put so much of our lives into. Alex looked over at Otto, but the large man waved him off. Dell's better with words, the convict said. Our story is well known by now. First team, the team that tried to kill the same man because we saw his potential for evil. 10 years ago we failed, and now there are only 3 of us left. We have the chance to make that right. Not just for pride, but for everyone who didn't bloody well make it. We're fighting for Sifix, Jack, Neala, Eli, and all those others whose names time has forgotten. Dellen turned his head towards Brandon. I'm not sure I have more to add. Most of you saw that we gave Jack a lot of shit. That man was always willing to cast blame, but he could never take any of it himself. He always had a justification or a reason, and somehow he was always right. I don't know if that made him a good leader or not, but we all made our decision and understood the repercussions when we signed on with him. Guys like Otto and I spent 10 years in our own private hells as a reaction to our failure. But now we have a chance to make it right, and I'll die before any of you gotta pay that same price. Tommy pulled off his glasses and laid them on the desk. This has been a crazy joyride for me. I spent the better part of my life seeking thrills and breaking whatever law the new world has tried to put into place. This is past all that. Revolution or not, it's been fun. Mikhail shuttered his golden eyes and sipped from his glass before speaking. I was unsure what to expect of the world when I left Russia. With no memory, I can see it for what it is, with no prejudice. This is a fight I have no personal accord with, but after seeing this world through your eyes, all your eyes, I find that it would be irresponsible of me to ignore a figure like Morrison, a man of the same vein as those who made me what I am today. I do not wish to see the consequences of his presence on this world.
Mikhail brought his eyes to Talia, who seemed unsure of what to say.
I've never left my home either. This has been an interesting few weeks. The warriors here are stronger than the children the Chinese dress up like your Marines. I find myself looking for guidance in God, though even there I have questions he cannot answer. My mother fought with some of you. If this cause was worthy of her skill, then I must see the horrors that bested her, and destroy them.
The last to speak was Layla, as Ezra waved off the opportunity to say anything. I'm going to have a smoke, he said, leaving the table.
Before I met Alex, or anyone else, I was running salvage caravans on the outskirts of the city. It was demanding work, seeing as the army had already done most of the looting themselves. I still managed, even though my teams had to deal with passing patrols every now and again. When I met Alex, I woke up in a building surrounded by soldiers. I thought I could handle them until I found a squad ready to gun me down. Alex was there with Tyler, Eli, and some friends who aren't with us anymore, and saved my life. I'm ready to give mine to honor their memory.
The smell of food began to reach their room. Alex raised his glass while the waitress set the meals around the table. To the fallen, and to us, he said simply, and the entire table nodded in agreement. Everything is in place, sir. We recalled everything from the road. The reactor's interior and exterior secured by several platoons. The tower guard are in place and on the nearby roads and interior. And the foreign guard? Morrison asked. Placed where you asked. The Rangers have taken up locations on several rooftops with full view of the tower. The Chinese honor guard is patrolling the diamond halls and shop areas. Your personal squad is in the heart of the tower, with access points to any location as you asked. And Cade? Morrison asked. It wasn't within our power to bring him back, sir. The Germans' technology far surpasses our own, though I doubt even he could have brought the soldier back. The brain damage was too severe. We did look at the other units, however. His trauma didn't seem to affect him, the soldier explained. No, why would it? Very good, Commander. Continue your work. The lockdown will end when I give the order. In the meantime, you have your orders. I copy, sir. Enjoy the evening. Morrison cut off the comm. He was out on the roof this night, even in the storm. He needed to feel the cold brutality of his city. It would fuel him for the coming attack and remind him of the empire he was fighting for. The world his father had given to him. The perfect world, the kingdom he always wanted. There were no fears for Morrison in this life until now. He could always defend himself, always outsmart a competitor. He knew there was more than one set of minds thinking against him this time, though. And that was his edge. Jack Newsom was dead and unable to lead his ragtag band of rebels from every corner and seedy hive of the rest of the world. This threat, 10 years, perhaps more in the making, would be weighted, judged, and then executed. If not in Queens, then at his very doorstep. And finally, after they were expunged from history, he could return to expanding his city and rebuilding the world in his name, as it was meant to be. After everyone had finished their meal, Alex explained the ins and outs of their mission for the following night. It took several hours to go over each facet, where Brandon would set up his overlook, how to get inside the building, and the best routes to take. Each member of the team had their own thoughts to contribute. Best to leave the hell chopper behind, Tommy suggested. We'll take 3 BMWs instead and punch through whatever blockade they set up. Those jeeps don't have the power to move with us. We can't all just jump out and make for the front door, Layla said. No, but there is garage access and elevators. I'm sure Tyler can slow them down at the entrance, Ezra replied. That'll have them sending ground forces into the garage from the street, Alex continued. From there, we trick the elevators to hit bottom, then go up the first set of floors by foot. Smart idea, Dellen added. It should throw them off when we actually take them. We're not just blowing them up? Janet asked. Not if we don't want to climb 100+ stories by foot, Alex said. I presume they don't end at his penthouse. There's a separate set that only operate in the Diamond Quarter, Ezra stated. That's where he keeps all the men and women most loyal to his corporation.
I walked through a large parlor, water fountains, stores, soldiers everywhere. It's an efficient killing ground for ambushes. When the techs figure out we're on the elevators, they'll try to shut them down, Otto said. They will not be an issue, Mikhail replied. Good. We'll take them as high as we can go, then blow them to hell. Half the hike is better than the full one, Tyler replied. Should also give us some space from the Marines, but if they sandwich us, we're screwed. We'll have to split a front and rear team. Talia and Otto up front, Janet and I watching the back, Alex added. Covering you in the building will be more difficult, but as long as we're in radio contact, I should be able to figure out where they'll be coming from, Brandon said. And Mikhail can provide you more of that intel, Alex replied. I will be stalking the dark spaces, stopping packs where I can and slowing down Marines moving towards your team, Mikhail stated. What about getting out? Tommy asked. The entire table shifted their faces towards Alex. He looked up at all of them for a few moments before taking a deep breath. He'd been waiting for this question, and he knew the answer wasn't going to be one any of them liked. Hell, he didn't even like it himself. Escape is not the priority. Killing John Morrison and blowing his tower is. The room fell silent. It was the truth, and it was fatal. Morrison will likely have a way out if he gets the sense he's losing. Once we get there, we'll take advantage. So what, another chopper? Janet asked. Maybe. Missile sites or not, it's our only way out apart from fighting back to the bottom. If it looks grim, we blow the tower. Alex ended. His team stared at him, giving him nods of understanding. Suicide mission. The final stages of the plan ensured it would live up to its name. Alex realized now that the planning was done, and everyone would need time to gather their thoughts, to prepare themselves. Alex moved to get up, but was caught by Dellen. Hold up, Yank. We all explained our reasons for wanting Morrison dead. What about you? What put you on this path all your life? Alex fell back into his seat and reached into his jacket. He pulled out Eli's burn-scarred pistol and set it on the table. For a long time, Morrison was just a name, a rumor, a legend. His Marines were synonymous with his brutality. I saw the worst of blood boil as a defenseless kid. The moment I trained myself to fire a gun was the moment where I had to kill or die. Then there was Yankee Stadium. Surviving that, and seeing the way he fooled people into safety just to wipe them clean, I knew that neither myself nor Eli were supposed to survive that day. Eventually that caught up with my best friend. And now I look at my life as borrowed time. If Morrison can be killed in that window, then I can leave this world knowing I did one thing right. I can forgive myself for the day he made me push innocent people out of my way, only for them to be killed so that I might live. I want him dead for those who never had a chance, for my mother, for Eli, and for everyone sitting around this table. Alex picked up Eli's pistol and gave it a long look before bringing his gaze back to the men and women that surrounded him. We will be successful, or we will all be dead in the next 36 hours. If it's got to be both, then I'm damn prepared, and I couldn't think of a better group to do that with than everyone here. Alex put his pistol back in its holster and got up from his seat. Enjoy the time, so tomorrow you can fight for more of it. Alex flipped through his journal, reading the old entries again. He figured he should write something important down for the night before, but he didn't know what. Layla was showering, so he was alone with his thoughts. He had entries dating back to before he started his fight. They were amusing, if a tad simple. His handwriting was still atrocious after all the years of practice. He was surprised that anyone apart from himself could read it. Reading his old writing always made him want to write more, so Alex flipped to a blank page. Late December 23rd or 24th, 2036. This is the last day, be it of my life or Morrison's. I didn't think this would all happen so fast. Life has gone at a fast pace since the day we wiped those APCs out in S4. Van is gone, Eli is gone, Jack Newsom is gone, Nayala Hargraven is gone. All these people I knew for years, or what has felt like a few days. Now I have the chance to make up for their sacrifice. I've got a chance to help settle some old scores. I don't feel uncertain or even nervous. Feels like any other run we've done where the odds were stacked against us. The scope and size are bigger, and we might get worn out a little faster. But I can't help but think of anything except the goal. We live or die in these next few hours. We chose this. Now we make the world right. We bring New Purgatory back from the dead. Layla, if you're reading this and I didn't make it out, know that I love you so much. Rebuild the world the way we would have together. Make it as beautiful as your smile. That's what this chance was all about. That's what I've always wanted. You go on and live. I will rest easy knowing the world is safe for you. Alex. As Layla came out of the shower, Alex shut the journal immediately and stuffed it in his jacket, hanging on the chair. Everything all right? She asked, undoing her towel and moving towards the bed. Alex couldn't take his eyes off her. Just fine, he said, moving to the bed and sitting beside her. You? He asked. Scared. I don't know how you could be so calm, Layla replied. I get the feeling something will clock me on the drive over. Stop, she replied, lying down on the bed and grabbing one of his hands. I'm sorry, I'm just taking all this in, Alex said. It's not over yet. We still have one last morning and day to sleep. Hold me. Alex didn't need to be told twice. He moved to the other side of her and wrapped her up in his arms, then closed his eyes. It was like the first time they'd been together all over again. This is my reason.